Anyway, so what this little mess that you see before you, I wanted to show you some, it actually was inspired by, I laugh as I say this, but okay, so scrolling through Facebook today, you can see I've been playing. I have inky hands. Scrolling through Facebook today, and I subscribe to 5-Minute Crafts. I just find it amusing, and occasionally I do learn something from there. And they had a video that scrolled through today. By the way, April hostess code if you use it. Sorry, I need to take a drink. And no, it's a non-alcoholic drink, just water. Anyway, so a video scrolled through on how to watercolor with products in your home. In this case, they used a Ziploc bag, a marker, and spritzed with water. And I thought, okay, this is not a new technique, what I'm going to show, but it's just a reminder that you don't always need the fancy tools to watercolor. So what I'm going to show is how to watercolor a background with minimal tools, inexpensive tools that if you're even a beginner crafter, probably have a lot of this, have most of this in your stuff. So what you're going to need, we'll put this one aside. You're going to need some markers. I grabbed I grabbed the wrong ink refill. Hold on a minute. So I really want to show like for like. So I'm going to show you the difference between using a variety of supplies tonight. Markers versus the ink refills, and then that's why I wanted the matching colors. So that just makes sense because you get better feel for the difference. And sorry, we've had a cold going through the house, so I'm kind of raspy and breathing hard. I do apologize. I should probably move my mic so you don't have to hear that so much. I am sorry. I'm going to use a silicone mat just because with spritzing with water, I don't want everything around here to get wet. That will help provide a vapor barrier, but there are other things you could use like freezer paper. Paper towels are fine. They do eventually soak through. Plastic bags, wax paper, or some other things that are more of a, even foil, permanent barrier. I have a window sheet. I have watercolor cardstock and regular white cardstock for this. Also going to be showing a clear block method. And my blocks are dirty, don't judge me. That's all I can say. So, here is what it will look like. I've got a bunch of Post-it notes. And make sure you have paper towels on hand, plenty of them. And the spritzer. It's a 2-pack in the catalog. I think they're 2 for $5, and I can't remember if they're on the retiring list or not. It didn't come readily to my head, so I'm not sure. Okay. Basic supplies. So basically you need a medium. A slippery glass would work too. Medium. You need to color from markers or something, and it's better to have water-based colors than a permanent marker because they're not going to react. Or ink refills. And again, here's another base. So these are the basic things you need. And some way to spritz water on. So this is what, okay, so let me back up. So this is what I started with. I started with the window sheet and I started with the ink refills. Sorry, I've got a bunch of ugly paper here. Again, I'm trying to protect my surface. And so this is using these 3 ink refills, which in this case is Poppy Parade, Mango Melody, and Daffodil Delight. So I wanted kind of an ombre look. This is what I was going for. Many ways to do this, no right, no wrong way. So they're all in the New Brights family. And I will show you how I did this, but this is using watercolor paper and a window sheet and the ink refills. So then I took that same idea and I still had, I also found that the window sheet gets so wet with this, you can get 2 out of it. So I just quickly laid a piece of cardstock over it, and this is what I came up with. And as you can see, comparing them side by side, This has a smoother tone. The colors blend better. It doesn't get splotchy. So to that end, already I can tell you, and we'll decide at the end, the watercolor paper is a far better choice for this. But if you only have cardstock, then you work with cardstock. You work with what you have on hand sometimes. Don't always need the fancy tools, as I say. Okay, so that is with the ink refills. Then I thought, okay, because of the video that I saw earlier, she used markers. So this is, here, we'll do watercolor on watercolor. This is the marker, and again, I'll show you how you do all this. Marker, watercolor paper, and the window sheet still. And I actually like this one. This is marker cardstock in the window sheet. I actually really kind of liked how that looked. But you can see it's more splotchy. The colors don't blend as well. I didn't want to, run the colors over each other too much and kind of ruin my markers either. So, and as I'm thinking about that, after I laid the color down and before I laid my paper on, I probably could have taken my finger or a paintbrush and blended them a little bit. Anyway, we'll play with that idea. That's why I'm live. I'm kind of wanting to show you some fun things. I like watercolor backgrounds. I like watercolored stuff. I don't actually like traditional paint watercoloring, aka Bob Ross stuff. Love what he did. I just don't find I actually enjoy that medium very much. I don't like painting at all, actually. It's one of those things that I will get over. That is one of my bucket list things in life, is to get over it's actually kind of a fear of painting. I can sculpt, I've taken art, I've taken design, blah. Painting, just, I can work with charcoal, I can work with pencil, I can work with pen. But somehow paint, and I love color, just sends me running for the hills. I don't know. It's weird. But then again, I'm sure there's some deep-seated whatever. Okay. And then I'll eventually show you this with the two different papers. Okay. So how do we do this? We put these aside. That is beautiful. That looks like a very intense sunset. And on Friday, I'm hoping that I can take these images, or at least some of these, and show you finished products with them. Okay, so I've got my paper towel at the ready, got my window sheet, I've got my silicone pad to kind of protect things because it doesn't get that messy, but it can. Let's start with the re-inker. So this is what I did. And this is the Poppy Parade. And I took and put just, it comes out in dots, or it comes out like this. There's no, you're just laying down some color. And then the Mango Melody, which is a really pretty orange. Kind of reminds me of the Crayola orange-yellow color. Or would it be the yellow-orange? No more the orange-yellow Crayola crayon that, if you're older, I don't even know if they have that color in the big box is 64 anymore. And after I'm done with this, I'll tell you what I learned. But let's walk through a little bit of this first. Okay, and this is the Daffodil Delight. Notice I'm not mixing colors because I don't want to ruin my bottle of ink. Okay, that's a fair amount of liquid on there, quite honestly. That's pretty wet. Now, we need to smear it around. So I'm going to take, and this is where it got really messy when I was practicing it. But I may spritz some more, I may not. You can kind of take and mix it yourself. You might need a little water up on that top spot. See how it really kind of spritzes out then? That's pretty. I mean, it looks kind of pretty. And my hands are getting inkier. So I didn't take as big a paper to demonstrate this with, and I know I'm going to get all inky here. Okay. So take and lay it on here. And I can feel it, you know, you're kind of, because you're floating it on so much liquid, you can kind of squish it around a little bit, which just smears it even more. And that's where it gets messy. But, and because it's so wet, and it hasn't quite soaked into that watercolor paper, you can take and move that around a little bit and get some kind of swirly effects. That will be pretty to play with. Okay, you see how much liquid is left? So I'm going to come in with my cardstock now. And already it doesn't float. It just soaks right in. And I didn't land that squarely either. So to that end, I'm going to take and shift it a little bit to make sure I get the whole thing covered. Oh yeah. Okay, interesting. But you see how it doesn't float, and if there's no liquid there, you just, the cardstock immediately starts soaking it up, so you don't have a lot of play with that. Mama needs some paper towels. Ha ha ha. Okay. Normally, when I was making this stuff, I was getting up and going to this. It look like I've been bleeding. My husband's going to probably come home. He's out grocery shopping and go, "What happened to you?" I'm fine. Actually, we'll just flip that over. It's mostly clean. I was getting up in between and going and rinsing them off, but I don't have that privilege right now. So now we are going to try the marker method. Okay? And if you're just joining me, I'm showing different ways to watercolor a background without your basic watercolor pencils, or an aqua painter, or a blender pen, or even an ink pad. You really don't even need that to do this, with just some basic supplies that you probably have. So now we're going to take the brush tip on our two-tipped Stampin' Up markers, and this is Poppy Parade. I am Poppy Parade. I'm going to, kind of in the same method, I'm trying to do this and laying the color down in this similar pattern so it's easier to compare. So I'll lay down a bunch of color, and here's our Mango Melody with the brush tip. Again, I want to get close, but I don't want to quite overlap that because I don't want to. I suppose if I colored it in light to dark, then it wouldn't matter as much if I overlapped, if I'd started with the Daffodil Delight. And you can always go like that if you get extra color. Okay, so I've laid down my 3 colors on my window sheet with a marker, and now I'm going to spritz this. And as you can see, it's already not as wet as that the re-inker was. It's not as intense and it's not as wet because they're not like, I mean, they're water-based, but they're not like dripping wet water-based like ink refill is. Okay, so I'm going to spritz. I think I'm good with that. Maybe. See, this is what I should have done when I did my sample. It's kind of, you know, blended a little bit. That's where watercoloring gets fun, is when you start getting those color blends and that gradation. So let's start with a piece of watercolor paper to be consistent, since that's what I started with last time. And again, the watercolor paper kind of floats on there, so you can kind of rub it around a little bit to get an even more, you know, eliminate some of those fine lines. Give it a little rub here. That's what it looks like. And look at the plastics peeling up. So, and now I still can play and get kind of that watercolor run. Or I could have been careful and not done that, but that's part of the fun of watercoloring. I'm just going to leave that there, and I'm going to clean up. And then we're going to come in and do the I'm making a big mess here. And I have a white tablecloth on my table. Not that I care if it gets that goopy, but okay, so we're going to come back in with the markers, and this time this was a watercolor paper, and then we're going to come in with the cardstock. So And if you're just joining me, hey, I can't see comments. Hi, Karen. Actually, I can see your name. I can't see much other than, but we're learning how to watercolor backgrounds without a lot of supplies. So I'm coming in with a marker, and then we're going to come in with our Mango Melody, and I'm just laying down the color again. And again, this was all based on one of those Facebook videos that rolled through my feed today, and I'm like, hey, I can do that with my own tools, and maybe, not going to say do a better job, but play with the idea. So I've laid down 3 colors, and we're going to use cardstock this time, and I'm going to spritz to get that wet, to get that watercolor look. Ooh, I might have spritzed too much. Maybe not, because the cardstock just immediately absorbs. So lay that down, make sure I get it all the way squarely on there. I can just feel it ooze into the paper right away. Here, let's flip it over. Yeah, it's already absorbed all of it. I do like that. I think I actually like the cardstock and the marker more than some of the others. You just don't get, comparing it, you just don't get the intensity though. So, you know, watercolor isn't usually very intense. I'm going to set this very goopy thing aside. And now let's try it. Let's say you don't have window sheets at clear acetate, which is like transparency film too. If you have that at home, some people do. Let's try it with one of our clear blocks. So again, I'm coming in with my dark marker. I don't know why I color dark to light. I know in theory you're supposed to go light to dark, but it's kind of easier for me to reach right now. So we'll come in with the dark, we'll move to the medium, the Mango Melody. Boy, is my block dirty too. Yuck. And then our Daffodil Delight. Again, this is a replacement for clear acetate, clear window sheets, which is what we call them in our catalog, or, you know, that kind of idea. So I'm going to come in here. You could use glass too. You know, you could take apart a frame you don't like and use glass. That would do the same thing, but I just want to show. So we'll give that a little bit of a spritz, get that wet, get that watercolor look going. And I'm going to come in here first with the watercolor paper. And again, I can kind of float that around a little bit, smear it. And see, because it doesn't soak in right away and you got that play, I can, but if I can move that, yes, look at that. Oh, well, maybe. So there's with the clear black and the watercolor paper. And now, God, looks like there was a horrible accident down here. Now, how would we do that with re-inker and cardstock? I don't know. I'm just playing, just trying to show you there are many ways to do this. That might not be enough. Hey, Beth. So here are some other ideas for watercoloring a background. If you don't have all the tools or don't want to get all your tools dirty too, there would be another reason. And Daffodil Delight, ink refill. But again, you could use a marker. And let's get that wet and get that color moving around. Look at that. Now I've made a real mess. Ooh. That's why I have many layers of protection on this table. And this is just, I'm out of paper, so this is it. This is just the cardstock, which is gonna, well, I put enough water in there. I was able to float it a little bit and mix it. But that is gonna take a while to dry. Oh my gosh, that paper's soaked, but isn't that beautiful? Let's see if we can get a little bit on that corner. Nah, it didn't quite go, but. So there are some ways that you can watercolor a background while those dry. I actually was running my space heater in my studio so you could kind of, so that you could see them dried up. So this is, again, let's see. Now I'm all, okay, yeah, I just want to put my sticky so you can kind of compare and decide which one you like. Cool look. Thanks, Beth. So here is the marker, the watercolor paper, and the window sheet. I did most of them on the window sheet, just showing you that you can use a clear block too, which if you have stamps, chances are you have a clear block in your craft room, so you can use that. And here is with the marker, the cardstock, and the window sheet. And you can see how the watercolor paper versus the cardstock, and you get that more watercolor look, you get the more modeled look, but if all you have is cardstock, that's what you use, and you can still make it work. And again, this is using the ink refill. Ooh, trying not to get mess. And this is using the cardstock. That is going to be fun to play with. And my hope is to get up some samples. I may not use all of these. Some of these might just be to show you, but to maybe turn some of these into samples on Friday and show you what the finished product is. Because I'm actually thinking some black, you know, doing like a silhouette thing on here, on this one especially, would be gorgeous. So this was my surprise live tonight, and I just wanted to show some different ways to watercolor a background. And again, it was all based on some Facebook video that scrolled through my feed today, and I'm like, hey, I can do that too. Maybe I can make it look prettier. I don't know. But again, they used a Ziploc bag instead of the acetate clear window sheet, transparency, whatever you want to call it, or this, and a marker, and then spritzed it. So you can see with the markers, you get a much softer look. If you want that really intense look, you got to go for the ink refills, because that pigment is, with the marker, it's already been watered down, you know, because it's water-based and whatever else they throw in a marker. But with this, you know, you're getting that pure color and that little bit of water you throw in there, so it's a lot more intense. So it also kind of depends on what you have on hand and what you want the final look to look like. So that is what I have. Thank y'all for watching. And for those that tune in later, again, different ways to watercolor a background. Message me if you have any questions. It looks like someone cut off their finger down here. Really didn't. That is the Poppy Parade. Boy, if anyone ever needs a Halloween thing, that Poppy Parade really does look like fresh blood. Funny and kind of scary. I'm going to go get this all cleaned up before I lay my hands in it. And thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you later. Bye.